Hi, I'm Kiki and today we're gonna talk about Khemjira. This series has one season with 12 episodes. This is a story about Khemjira, as the title says, who was born with a curse and who has the ghost which stuck to him and want his. Khem's fate is also connected with mysterious and very powerful shaman Peem, who will play a huge part in this whole story and also in Khem's life. So if you're looking for some great fantasy shows with shamanism, curses, with well-written characters, great story, which looks absolutely beautiful and has incredibly talented cast, then you just can't miss this show if you haven't watched it yet, of course. They showed Thai and specifically Asian culture, which is a little bit different from what we usually see in Thai dramas. I really hope so that they kinda make a trend that we will see more of that kind of stories from different parts of Thailand, that we will see different cultures, because Thailand has a variety of those. They have plenty of different cultures, languages, and that we will see more of it in Thai shows. That would be great, because that not only will be entertaining for us, but also we could learn something. So I think that it will be a really good idea. So yeah, I hope so that thanks to Khemjira we'll see more of that kind of stories. They showed real rituals, they used real incantations, and in general they were very respectful towards people who work like this, which is a huge advantage. I think that this is definitely one of the best shows that I have ever seen. I wouldn't call it a masterpiece, unfortunately, because for me personally, masterpiece is when everything makes sense, everything works, but unfortunately here, not always it was like this, but I will talk about it a little bit later in spoiler part. Acting was on the highest level and it was such a great experience to see such a talented cast. And I absolutely love about this production that it was so beautifully directed. They paid attention to even the smallest details, and that they, instead of, make it easy and use CGI for everything, they used CGI only when it was absolutely needed and they couldn't make it a different way. But when they could make it using actors, makeup, characterization, I don't know, build something, create something on their own, they decided to make it that way, and because of it, it made this whole story even better, more alive, and very realistic, which is hard to reach in fantasy shows. Also, let's talk about intro for a moment, because it was definitely one of the best that I have ever seen, maybe even the best, because everything was perfect about this intro. Music, shots that they used, the way how it was made, how much it fit to this story. Also, something which was a huge advantage of this production was that even if Khem was the main character, then we had so many other characters, and even if they had very little screen time, then still we could feel like they matters for the story, that they're actual people, they were very realistic, and we could get attached to them. And in general, the atmosphere that they created and the way how it was made, we could not only following the story, but we could feel like we're part of this, like we know those characters, like we're going through all of it with them, which is so hard to do, but here it definitely works. Now let's come to spoiler part. Let's start from characters. First, of course, Khem, since he was the main character. He was such a precious and absolutely good person and such a cutie. We could see this from very beginning, and he was also a very empathetic person, a great observer, because he spotted bad things immediately and he always tried to help as much as he could. But I also cried so much because of his story and how absolutely heartbreaking it was, especially when I was thinking about it, how extremely young he is. During this whole story, he had this vision that he can even not survive and he can have no future, even if, as watchers you could expect that probably everything will be okay because this is drama. But on the same time, I think that they make it really good, that literally until the last second when Ramphueng was defeated, we could feel the stress and not be very sure if it really gonna end up well. So yeah, that's another plus for this production. But also something which was absolutely heartbreaking for me when it comes to Khem was that he was constantly blaming himself for all the things that were happening, people who were close to him, and how much he was keep apologizing, and no matter how many times people would tell him that this is not his fault, because it was Ramphueng's fault, then still he always seen himself as a burden, especially after the situation with Grandma Say, Pong and Ak, that he hated himself that much that he also started to feel like other people will hate him, and that many bad things always happening his close ones because of him, which wasn't true at all, but I totally understand why he felt like this. But at the same time, it was absolutely heartbreaking. After I have seen this whole story, I started to think about Namping and Khem kind of like the two sides of the same coin, because they both went through hell, they both were very tragic characters. Thanks to them we could see how different people will react on very similar experiences and when they're going through hell. Because some people will choose that kind of path like Ramping, that they will choose violence, revenge, hate, and all those bad things, which yeah, put them in bad position, because she never was happy actually. And yeah, it turned out at the end that she never actually wanted all those negative things. She didn't want revenge, which still doesn't justify anything what she has done. But from the other side, we had Khem, who also experienced a hell, but instead of choose revenge, hate, and all those bad things, he will keep choosing good, kindness, love, and stuff like this. Which, yeah, like, he was such a pure and precious person, and Namping did such a great job portraying him. But yeah, when it comes to Namping and his incredibly acting skills, I will talk about it later. I'm not sure if there were any bad parts about Khem. Yes, okay, it sounds too perfect, but seriously, he was keep proving during this whole story how full of compassion he is, how extremely good and pure person he was. And something which absolutely amazed me about him is how he never held any grudge against the people who were bad for him. And okay, as much as I would totally understand that he didn't have problem to forgive Yod, when he mostly has known him as someone good who was keep protecting him, then I have such a huge respect for Khem, and he really amazed me with it that he was able to kind of forgive someone who was so horrible for him, like Ramping, who wanted everyone around him who was important for him, and who made a hell for him, even if he hasn't done anything bad to her. But yeah, it proves even more how incredibly and purely good person he was. That would be great if people like him and characters like him would be more popular and treated as a role model, not some dangerous, disgusting, sick and toxic people. Now let's talk about our shaman Peem. Well, on the beginning I definitely wasn't the biggest fan of him, because he was very annoying for me with how mean and rude he was for Khem, especially that it was without any reason. And okay, even later after we get to know him more and we could understand why he was like this, then still I don't like it, because he didn't need to be that mean. He could be just cold and that's it. Especially that his job is pretty specific and part of it is taking care about people. But yeah, he also wasn't the nicest for Zed, Pong, and Ike, but still I feel like for Khem it was the worst. And because of it, I was very happy that very close to the end, few people who were close for Khem told Peem to not be like this for him, which he totally deserved. But when we get to know him more and we find out more about his story, we could see why he became that kind of person, why he was so cold for people, and that under this he was very sensitive, but he had a reason why he decided to put that kind of mask on himself and show himself that way, probably to not lose anyone anymore, to drive people away so no one will be close for him. But yeah, since from the beginning we could say that he got attracted to Khem very soon, still I get it. I mean, knowing his story, but still, I think that he didn't need to be that mean. Relation between Peem, Tong, and Ike was so cute, and I love it so much, but I hated he was punishing them. And experiencing losing them with him was so painful and heartbreaking, but at the same time, it was the first part which disappointed me. And unfortunately, after this, many things were just worse and worse, but I will be more detailed later. Peem was that kind of person who experienced so much in his life, and he and Khem had very similar experiences actually, because Peem also lost mom in a very young age. He found out later that it was because of his grandpa, that he basically has no one except probably Grandma C, who truly cared about him and loved him, which, you know, it make a damage, especially for such a young person, because he was somewhere at uni, right, when he found out this, because of how tough his life was. And that, yeah, he and Khem had very similar experiences. I think that because of it, it was possible for them to create such a strong bond, and in general that this whole romance happened between them, and that they fell for each other so much because they could understand the other side, and you know, they didn't need to explain anything because the other side totally get it. I really like Peem and Grandma C relation. In general, I absolutely love Grandma C. She was so lovely. I love that she was shipping Khem and Peem from very start. And she was a typical grandma because she always take care about every kid. She always makes food and stuff like this. But also it looked like she was pretty powerful shaman, and good that they had also her, not only Peem, especially that their fields were slightly different. But it was such a painful part, and the whole episode basically, from what I remember, when she wasn't there anymore, we found about it and experienced this huge loss with Peem, when at the same time basically he lost three very important people for him. And yeah, it was heartbreaking enough, but of course they need to make it even more heartbreaking, putting this scene on the beginning of that episode when Grandma Say hacked Peem, told him that he doesn't need to be strong when he's with her, he can be weak, and yeah, showing how very close they were, how much they care about each other, how much they love each other. And of course, when she was singing, and later when we find out what happened to her, of course that they need to play this song to make it even more painful, because it wasn't painful enough. Still, when I think about it, I want to cry. But also that Khem was blaming himself, and that he couldn't even force himself to say goodbye to Grandma Si because he was blaming himself, even if it wasn't his fault. But yeah, I understand why he thought like this. But it was so frustrating and heartbreaking that he was in that position. We haven't seen much about Peem's previous incarnations, but okay, when it comes to Puchakin, I can't say much about him because we had basically one scene with him, so I don't really have any opinion about this guy. But when it comes to Wat, I like him so much because he seems to be such a good person. And at the moment when we have seen his story with Khemmika, he looked like complete opposite of Peem, but fortunately later Peem changed, and I think that at the end they were pretty similar, but still I think that Wat could be better. But I'm very curious what kind of person he was after he came back from war, because this is something which destroy most of people. It's changing them, and I'm curious if he still had this good in him, and if he still was such a good person, or he changed drastically, which would be very understandable, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I'm also very curious how his life will look like later, and I would love to see this. Usually in productions like this, when you have so many characters, so many things are happening, I don't care much about romances if this is not super captivating, but here I'm totally in love in all those romances. I felt sorry, of course, for Wat and Khemmika and for Jin and Chayada, but I was really happy that at least in their next incarnations they found happiness, and that both our main couples, they got their happy ending. And yeah, that finally they could be happy, especially Peem and Khem, because they deserve it so much after all this hell that they need to go through in their life. In general, when it comes to Peem and Khem's story, I absolutely love it that it wasn't rushed, that everything was very realistic, it happened naturally, that they had time to really get to know each other, that we could see this and experience this with them. But also a huge advantage for this production definitely is that they were very careful with it and very detailed, that we could really see the age gap between Khem and Peem, that Peem was a very young person who still had a lot to learn. He was super energetic, even if and mostly he was very sad and scared, which was very understandable. That still, especially when he was with Shan and Zed, they totally acted like 20 years old. But when it comes to Peem, we also could see that he was definitely older, and yeah, that every single time when they were together, and especially in their NC scenes and their kissing scenes, we could see this so much, and how much Khem was keep learning from Peem, which yeah, was a huge advantage of their relation definitely. Peem and Khem first kiss is definitely one of the best when it comes to BL history. And I absolutely love it, how adorable it was, how Khem was awkward, that he had no idea what to do, that he was worried that his lips can be bitter because of this tea. It was absolutely adorable. At the same time, I don't know why, but the scene was so touching and beautiful that I remember that when I watched it for the first time, I cried a little bit. Don't ask me why. In general, I cried so much during this production, from happiness, from sadness, from frustration. I wouldn't be surprised if during the first time I cried for most of it, or maybe whole this production. But yeah, really often, because how beautiful it was. I like that during the story, you know, the more they kissed, the more Khem was experiencing this, and he had more courage to do different stuff. And also when it comes to their NC scenes, I absolutely love how they were made, and again that we could see that Khem had no idea what to do, that it was very new for him, how awkward he was, especially during the first one, because with second it was a little bit different because he know something, he knows some basic already. Still, he was very awkward and shy because he was that kind of person. But I also really liked that every single time Peem was very careful with him. He went to make Khem feel comfortable. He was keep checking if Khem is okay with different stuff, if he also enjoyed this, and also that he was teaching Khem what to do, where and how to touch, and yeah, that he was so caring about Khem and so kind with him. Even if I'm a person who usually don't care much about NCC and especially don't pay that much attention to them, then here they were absolutely beautiful. And especially when it comes to domundi, I usually don't like that they have that kind of scenes because I feel like they way too much. Then here I like it. I think that they were beautifully made, and yeah, especially how detailed they was, but still I feel like they were a little bit too much. So I just hope so that actors were totally okay with it. That's a small thing, but I really liked it from the moment when Khem was hit by a rock and Peem put a medicine on him. He changed very much, and okay, still after this they had some problems, but it was coming in a good direction. And from that moment, Peem started to use this soft and calm voice when he was talking to Khem when they were alone. Also, when he told Khem that when they're alone he can call him P, later Peem, it was so adorable. And in general, finally, when Peem opened himself for Khem and he followed his real feelings, they become such a cute couple. Now let's focus on Ramphueng. Her story was absolutely horrible, heartbreaking, and it was very painful to experience what happened to her with her. And what happened to her baby, was beyond cruel. What Katkeu did, there's no excuse or justification for this, but still, it can't justify Ramping actions later. And okay, as much as I would understand why she would want revenge on the people who actually hurt her, then I think that taking revenge on them in their next incarnations didn't make any sense. And okay, I understand that it can give her some kind of justice. She could feel that if not in this life, then in the next life they can suffer, because in the times when she lived, then she had no rights basically. So maybe that was her logic, but still it can't justify anything, because people in their next incarnation, they didn't even know why they were suffering, why they were cursed. So it was absolutely disgusting and horrible what she has done to so many people, because she destroyed so many lives. She created hell for so many people, many. And this doesn't make her anyhow better than people who hurt her. To be honest, I feel really sorry for Ramphueng, Katkeu and Kakang, because all three of them lived in times which were horrible for women. They had no rights basically, and they all were victims of this guy, because he was also a huge problem there. Because if he wanted to have few wives and mistresses, then he should take care about all of them and see if there's some problem. And you know, his wife didn't even try to pretend that she hated everyone, and she was the problem there. So he should banish her or punish her somehow, I know, kick her out, wherever, because she could even every single one there. Even if I partly understand why she was so obsessed over position, power, and with Ramping in general, then still nothing can justify what she has done. Also, something which is absolutely ridiculous for me that in Ramping's curse, that she was the most cruel for a little kid. Because Krongkwan was just a terrified kid, and okay, I understand that Ramping was the most mad at her because she was the one who said the last that it was Ramping's fault, but again, she was a little kid who didn't probably fully understand what was going on. She was blackmailed by her mother, and yet she was the kid, period. She couldn't be responsible for anything, and Ramping was the most cruel for her, which is ridiculous, especially that, yeah, she was the mother, so kids theoretically at least should be her soft spot. But it was absolutely disgusting that she was so horrible for Krongkwan. Because the only people who were responsible for this, first of all, of course, the person who was the most responsible was Katkeu, so I fully understand why Ramping would hate her and wanted the biggest revenge on her. And also that man, because he was a huge problem in all of it. Also, something which was very ridiculous and didn't make much sense for me was that first Ramping helped and saved that baby which her mother wanted because of her ex, And even Grandma C said that even if Ramping is so horrible, then still she remember how to be a mother. And later she had no problem to Tong, which was very weird for me because yeah, if she had soft spot for kids, then even more she should have for boys, since she had a son, and Tong could be even her son. But that was the moment when many stupid things started to happen in this production, unfortunately. Another thing which is super frustrating in Ramping's story is that she lived in the times when she was basically no one. She had no rights, and even if they wouldn't be so cruel for her, then still she couldn't do anything to them. Also, we could see that she was not only such a young person and very naive, unfortunately for her, then she was such a sunshine. She was so lovely. And I feel like she didn't even fully understand how dangerous the situation was for her, that she fell for that guy who didn't care about her at all, probably. And she probably didn't even expect that Katka can be such a horrible person. Especially that, okay, maybe she just said it, but I feel like she was very genuine with it. That we could say that she probably treated Katka like a role model, even because she wanted to learn from her. And they could live in normal way, all of them could be happy there, or as much as it was possible in that times. But yeah, Katka was a person who was walking problem in that house. I really like Khem and Jet friendship. You can see how much they care about each other, and it was so cute that they were shipping the other one with their future lovers. Also later when Shan was part of the group, we could see how much they love each other, cared about each other, and thanks to their scenes, they reminded me how young they actually are, because sometimes I will keep forgetting this because of all those very sad and tragic stuff that were happening in this production. Thanks to their scenes, they make it a little bit lighter, because usually they were funny, and yeah, in all this sadness, we had them as this little light of this show, and I absolutely love it. I love our second couple so much in both versions, as Jin and Chayada and also as Jet and Shan. They were so funny and adorable, but when it comes to Jin and Chayada's story, I felt so sorry for them, for what happened to them, because they live in times when unfortunately it was pretty much impossible for them, especially to be openly together. But I was happy that at least in the next incarnations they found happiness finally. But in that kind of stories, I'm always curious, when people knows about their previous lives, how much their emotions are truly theirs and how much they're actually just tools for their previous versions, which is pretty sad and scary. But also huge applause for casting for people who were each other incarnations, their little versions, stuff like this, because all those people were so similar to each other, so yeah, it definitely deserved to be praised. But also when it comes to Jet and Shan, they were absolutely funny. I couldn't with them at the beginning when they were fighting with each other all the time. Also this part when Pong came and they were keep fighting over their ship. And also very funny about both those couples was when something finally happened between them and they were together, then they didn't want to tell the other ones about it, even if they were super obvious with it. Pawat and Khemmika's story was absolutely heartbreaking and painful. And not only that they lived in times which were horrible, they were separated by war, which it always is one of the biggest tragedies when it comes to war, that families are separated. But in general, war only bring destruction and thousands of tragedies because of some stupid politicians or other people who want other people's lands, resources and stuff, which are definitely not theirs and shouldn't be theirs. And the worst part is that those politicians and people who start the war, they not people who will suffer, they not the ones who die, but some ordinary people who usually don't even want it. So yeah, because of this, we really, as a society, should finally start to learn from history, spot similarities, and make those politicians accountable, and keep reminding them that they had what they have only because of people. And at the same time, we need to believe in our power, that we can take all of it from them, and keep showing them that we don't want wars and that it's pointless and only they want it. If they want it so much, then they should be in the first line, so they would as soon as possible, and will be much better without them. But I think that Pawat and Khemmika's story, the most heartbreaking is not only that they live in that kind of times and they need to experience such a horrible thing, but that they were so deeply hurt by a person who was important for both of them. What Chaya did to Khemmika and Wat was absolutely disgusting and horrible, especially that they were theoretically at least the closest people for him and the most important. I seriously have no idea what he was thinking doing this, because okay, even if he met Khemmika first, and even if he had feelings for her, then it was his problems. Even if Wat would never exist, then Khemmika still could not grow any feelings for Yot, and that would be completely okay. But his obsession was so disgusting and sick that he even followed her and connected his life with her in her next incarnation. This is completely different level of being creepy. On the beginning, I had much better opinion about him before we find out about his story, because I thought that he's a good ghost who's protecting Khem because it looked like this. But later, when we find out about his whole story, I definitely don't like him. He was a disgusting person. I'm not the biggest fan of Khem's father because, okay, I totally understand that losing a wife could be very hard for him, but Khem also lost mom and he needed his father, not a monk. Maybe his father needed peace of mind, but still, he was father after all, and he definitely didn't do what he should. I still really hope so that he become a monk just before we start the story, and I hope so that he didn't left Khem when he was younger and right after he lost his mom, because okay, I know that his father still could care about him and be his father even if he was a monk, but you know, that's not a typical parenthood, and Khem still was in that age when parents are important. I just don't like that he left Khem alone with everything, especially that, you know, he had this perspective that soon he will lose his son, which is even harder for me to understand why he made that kind of decision. But yeah, he definitely wasn't the best father. Also, I was pretty shocked that Khem's mother, knowing about the curse, she decided to bring a kid to this world when, well, there always were 50% of chance that it would be a boy, and she knew that his life can be turned into hell. And okay, I know that without it we wouldn't have the story, but still, that wasn't very responsible, to say at least. When Pong show up in this story, at that moment I would ship him probably even more with Khem than with Peem if Khem would be interested, because we could see that Pong's flirting was pretty overwhelming for Khem, which is not surprising for me at all because he had so many things at that point in his life that he definitely wouldn't have time for very ordinary romance. But the part which broke my heart pretty much was after they left the ghost house, and Khem said that the ghosts which he has seen were scarier, and Pong thought that he meant the ghost house in Bangkok. That scene made me realize, and probably Khem also, how his life is completely different from ordinary people, and how tough it is only because some vicious ghosts stick to him. He didn't even have chance to have a normal relationship or stuff like this, to enjoy his life and do things which many people in his age has done. He need to think about Ramphueng, he need to think about care, how to broke it, and yeah, how to survive basically. It was very heartbreaking to realize it, but I really like the way how Khem rejected Pong. It was very respectful and kind, but also very clear, which, yeah, typical Khem. But also I like the way how Peem rejected Peem, because he said to her that she's amazing. I think that he even called her perfect from what I remember, but just not the right person for him, and that's it. There's nothing wrong with her. It was very kind and respectful way, still very clear, but yeah, on the same time very caring. Something which is a huge advantage for me in this production is that morally it was really good, that it shows great values, and that they showed many social problems, like for example the father who locked his kid, this marriage when this dude was being his wife, that woman who wanted her kid after her ex left her for other woman, those jerks who were making fun of Khem, that they also make fun of people's beliefs, you know, many different stuff. But first of all, they always showed different people reactions on stuff like this, but at the end they always showed no tolerance and acceptance for stuff like this. They always show it as bad, they were very clear about it, and they showed good values, how stuff like this should be taken care of, and yeah, that people never should be quiet about stuff like this, but they should always react and try to help people who going through hell. And yeah, that even if this is theoretically just joking, like about those three dudes who later become monks, that they were making fun of Khem or beliefs of those people from the village, that even such a theoretically small thing, it always was pointed out as a bad thing. I absolutely love it about this production, that morally it was really good, which is not so often nowadays in different productions, but it's definitely a huge advantage of this part when they made a performance for remembering Holy Man's rebellion. I love it so much because those stuff really happened. This is a real story based on facts. You can check this out and read about it, because it was very sad and tragic story. People who made this performance and those paintings, everything was so beautiful but very heartbreaking and sad on the same time. But it was nice to see that those ghosts like it, but at the same time I felt really sorry for them that they stuck there, they weren't able to move further. But maybe thanks to people like the ones who created performance, they would see that they remembered, and that they remembered in a good way, that their effort wasn't forgotten. Something which was a little bit ridiculous and funny for me, that those people, no matter which incarnation, they always look the same, which probably would be pretty weird and suspicious if so many people would look exactly the same and always will be there, all in Thailand for so many years. So yeah, I know that they would need to cast more people, they would need more money for it, but that was a little bit hilarious. Also, I was pretty shocked when I have seen that Lon is one of the directors, because I know him as an actor, and by the way, he's really talented one. You can know him as Ayan's uncle from The Eclipse, or if you watch Remember You with Theta One, then he played this psycho there. If you haven't watched these two dramas, then I definitely recommend it. But I was very shocked that he was one of the directors here, and if that was his debut, then that was absolutely amazing, and I'm really proud of him that he made it. Also, he played the Lord of the Mountain, the God of the Mountain. I don't know, that snake which gave Peem the dagger, and who was Pushagi's friend or brother. I'm still pretty confused about the relation, but he was one of Naga's. And he also did a great job, not only as director, but also as an actor here. Now I want to talk about specific scenes. First one was when Khem and his mom met for the last time, when he prepared food for her. It was very lovely and warm scene, but also it was very touching and sad. Because of it, of course, I cried during this, especially when I was thinking about it, that if there would be no Ramphueng curse, then they could be happy for many years, but also that Khem's mom didn't have enough energy to visit him more often. But I was really happy that they could spend some time together for the last time. And also when he was laying on her lap, they were talking, when she told him that he and Peem already met. And especially that part when she was singing to him, it was absolutely beautiful, but at the same time it was so painful that I feel like all the pain of the story hit at once, and how absolutely tragic Khem's story was. But yeah, at the same time, I'm absolutely in love in that scene, because actors did such a great job that we could really feel like they were family, and how much those characters loved each other. Another scene which I absolutely love, especially when it comes to Peem and Khem relation, was that one after Khem woke up and he kind of mixed himself with Khemmika, and he thought that Peem is Wat, was that Peem not only was there for Khem, he let him hug him, and he was trying to calm him down, but also that he was reminding Khem that they're not Wat and Khemmika, but Peem and Khem, and they're completely different people, and they have different life. Because probably Khem needed this so much, especially this caring and support at that moment. But also later, after Khem asked him to stay, that he really stayed. He take care about Khem, and he even let him hold his finger. That was pretty cute. I think that it was the first time when he softened so much around Khem. And yeah, thanks to this and how he showed different side of himself, I started to like him, because yeah, before this he was mostly annoying for me. Those were two, maybe three scenes, but from one side I like them so much because of from acting side, how incredibly they were and how very emotional, but at the same time they were so painful to see. And I'm talking here about this part after what happened to Grandma Seitong and Ak, when Peem begged Khem to stay, and even if he got sick because of all those emotions, how overwhelmed he was after what Ramping did to him, and you know, with everything was going on, then still he was worried about Khem. He wanted to protect him. He was the one who wanted to support Khem, and I absolutely love that he assured Khem that nothing of this was his fault. But on the same time, after in how bad condition Peem was, how he begged Khem, that Khem at the end still decided to leave, was absolutely heartbreaking for me. And I fully understand why he did it, especially that, like he said on his own, he thought that everyone hates him, that he didn't want to face anyone because he was too afraid of this. It broke my heart so much that he felt like there's no place for him in the village anymore, and that because of him all those people suffer. That he wasn't able to see that all of this was Rampeng's fault, not his. But yeah, I felt so sorry for both of them at that scene, and it was definitely one of the most heartbreaking parts of this production for me. Another extremely heartbreaking scene was the one with Khem's nightmare when he was running around that forest. Rampeng was following him, and when she was trying to convince him to give up, I wasn't surprised at all that he decided to choose this, because we could see how exhausted he was at that moment and that he probably just had enough. But it was so painful to hear when he asked Peem why he came, why he can't just let him go, why he can't leave him, when he just giving up. He doesn't want anything anymore. He just wanted to disappear, which was very understandable after all this hell that he went through because of Ramping. But on the same time, I absolutely love this scene. It hurt me so much that of course I was crying, but on the same time I absolutely love the scene when it comes to Peem and Khem, because when Peem came, not only Ramping was mad, which made me happy, but also that he came to Khem, he supported him, he tried to calm him down, he showed his support, he hugged him. Okay, I think that I have a thing for their hugs, but they always look so comfy and warm. And yeah, when he hugged him and he changed the whole scenery, those lightning bugs showed up, and that he turned this from something absolutely horrific to something warm, calm, relaxing, and absolutely beautiful. And also later after Khem woke up, that he hugged him and he was talking to him, and again this very soft and quiet voice. I think that it was the part when I like him probably the most during this whole story. Another scene which was absolutely heartbreaking, but I don't know why, but I also like this scene so much, was the one when Khem showed Peem his sketchbook and his drawings. And when he said that he made it with people who are close to him, who help him, just in case he would disappear and he won't be there anymore, so something would stay, that they will be able to remember him. It broke my heart so much how he was totally accepted with his fate, that he was so calm at that point, but at the same time exhausted, that he just accepted this, that probably Ramping is gonna him. It was so heartbreaking that he need to go through this, but probably because of this, I like this scene, because I like that Peem, again, was talking with soft voice, that he hugged him. Okay, I really have a thing to their hugs, because they were so warm and they look so good. Like, we could feel the support from Peem and how much he cares about him. But it doesn't change the fact that this was one of the most heartbreaking scenes at the same time. Still, one of the funniest scenes definitely was the one with cooling powder, especially this part when Khem threw this straight into Peem's face. I still can't believe that they actually did it, but I don't like what happened later and how aggressive Peem was, that he threw this paper and he yelled at Khem. Because I'm not surprised at all that Khem thought that Peem likes him and has feelings for him, because he was sending him mixed signals. And Peem should know that Khem can react like this. And yeah, he should be smarter, especially that he was older. And you know, it was way too harsh how he treated Khem, especially that for him it was probably humiliating enough what happened. And also, he was that kind of person who was very sensitive. And yeah, when Peem was yelling at him, I also was a little bit scared of him, but he should just explain it this calmly to Khem, why he shouldn't done this. And you know, he had already some feelings probably for Khem, at least he was interested, but maybe he was confused about it or he didn't want to admit it. But it doesn't change the fact that he should be way calmer with Khem and explain it to him in normal way, because definitely results will be better than what actually happened. Another super funny scene was the one after Khem and Peem kissed, and the next day he was making this pillow for Peem, and he talked with Jet and Shan. They were asking him questions, and when he was trying so much to pretend that nothing happened, that nothing is going on between Peem and him, with this stressed smile and this high voice, he was such a bad liar, which is a good thing actually, and showed even more that he was such a pure person. He was absolutely adorable in that scene. Okay, now I want to talk about this whole part from the moment when we lost Grandma C, Tong and Ak, to the half of the last episode, something like this, to the moment when they defeated Ramping, because so many absolutely ridiculous and stupid stuff happened during this that I want to talk about it as one big part. I will keep pointing out what happened there and why I don't like it, but in general, when it comes to that part with Grandma C, like I said, it was absolutely heartbreaking that they can blame himself so much, and also that he was keep apologizing people, they were keep repeating him that it wasn't his fault, but still he couldn't believe in this. Well, good that it turned out that Grandma C before Ramping possessed her, but still it was absolutely heartbreaking what happened. And also it broke my heart so much when Khem apologized Ak for Tong, but I like that Ak told him that it wasn't his fault and that he truly believed in this, that it wasn't because it was Ramping only. But this whole part with Tong, it was the first part when this drama started to disappoint me, and I didn't like their decisions because, okay, maybe it was in the novel like this, then in the novel it doesn't make sense and they couldn't change it much. I don't like this part with Tong, and from that moment it started to be just worse and worse because he was a spirit after all, so it shouldn't be so easy for Ramping to him. You know, that's the reason why this is so hard to deal with spirits, ghosts, demons and stuff like this, because usually some special ritual is needed, someone extremely powerful, and okay, Ramping was, but after all Tong was already, so it's in general pretty hard to person. So it was completely ridiculous, and I feel like they just made it to make it super dramatic and for shock value, which worked because it was super emotional, it was painful, I cried so much, but still it doesn't change the fact that logically it didn't make sense, and from that point many things just get worse and worse, and in many times they make those characters stupid. This whole trip to Bangkok was absolutely stupid because, okay, as much as I understand Khem was blaming himself that he wanted to leave everything behind and deal with it, Ramping finally, then still when he has seen that Jet and Shan coming with him, I can't believe that Khem would agree on this and he would put them in danger on purpose, especially that they knew how dangerous Ramping was at that point. Also, why Jet haven't seen Ramping in Bangkok when at that point he already has seen spirits and ghosts, so he should be able to see him. The next one, the whole Peem's plan was absolutely idiotic, and that worked only because that was the drama. Because there's no way that that would work, just logically it doesn't make any sense, because as much as I can believe that they could deceive Ramping that Khem was in the car when it was Jet actually, then it's pretty much impossible that she wouldn't feel that something is off, because she was the spirit, and spirits need to be connected with something, with object, a person, a place, or stuff like this, and she was connected with Khem, or at least they explain it like this. So when they were so far from each other that Khem could be already in the village and she still was in Bangkok, she probably would feel that something is off. But also, no matter how much all of them would try to convince Khem, I can't believe that he would agree to this plan when he could lost every single person who was part of it. And Khem wouldn't be able to live with that thought. And this perspective even would be enough for him to never agree to this plan, or at least with how they created this character. Because I'm sure that someone like him would never agree to put every single one of them in danger, because all of them could killed by Ramping, especially that Peem even said that he's not sure with how powerful and strong Ramping was at that point if he would be able to fight with her and defeat her. So it makes absolutely no sense that Khem with his personality agreed to this plan. Also, when they were still in Bangkok before Peem came with his ridiculous plan, I totally don't get it, and it doesn't make any sense why San and Jet were keep leaving Khem alone when Ramping could attack him in any moment. I get it that they were in their honeymoon phase and maybe production decided that they want to put more scenes with Shan and Zed, but it was very wrong time at this, and yeah, I just can't believe that they would really left Khem alone in that kind of moment when they knew how extremely dangerous it was for him. So again, it was very stupid part. Another part which was completely ridiculous, this whole stupid drama with Jed, Katzen and Shad, and that they were even wasting time on this when it was so close to Khem's birthday. And in general, Katzen was basically completely useless in this plan and in general to be part of all of it. I mean, okay, I get it that they need cars, they need a private jet, and someone who would train Shan how to drift, which was another extremely stupid part of this plan, because from what I understand, after Peem came, then they had 1 day until Khem's birthday, so they prepared all of it in 1 day, including Shan training how to drift, which was extremely dangerous because he could even there because even professionals sometimes during this, so that was extremely stupid to put that kind of part in general, put it in this plan. But thing which was probably the most stupidest in all of it, that they didn't check on which hour exactly Khem was born, because that was so basic that they should start from this when they were creating this super great plan. But also when they finally was in the village and they were in the sacred ring with the monk, why they couldn't just sit there and wait until 6 a.m. so Ramping wouldn't be able to do what she planned, and she probably would be punished finally, she would disappear wherever, something bad would happen with her probably. Why they couldn't just sit there and wait? Especially that we could see that Ramping wasn't able to come there, so they could do this, and yes, of course it won't be so dramatic and emotional, but at least it would make some sense. And yeah, why Peem left this sacred ring and do all of it, which basically was asking to be attacked, killed, when he didn't need to do this? Why he didn't wait until it was really necessary to do stuff like this? Another ridiculous part, why Peem used this dagger on those servants, not on Ramping. If he would deal with Ramping finally, those servants would go away because she controlled them. So it was such a waste of this dagger, especially that he knew how dangerous it is and that probably he's not gonna survive it. So it makes him look like idiot. And okay, yes, this whole part when they were fighting with Ramping, it was very emotional, it was heartbreaking, I cried a lot, but it was only because it was such a beautifully directed and actors did incredible job and we could feel their emotions, but logically it was stupid. And okay, I understand after Monk Kassem explained that it need to be made in specific order, that different stuff need to happen, but it doesn't change the fact that it made those characters stupid. Another absolutely stupid part was the one when Ted took Shan and they jump into the water, and that Shan, instead of drag them out and save both of them, he decided to kiss Jed, because yeah, that's totally something which people do in that kind of moments. What was that, some fairy tale that kissing is answer for everything? But even more ridiculous was that Jed, who was possessed, who almost drowned because of his super smart boyfriend, who has seen their previous life, even he, after he realized what was going on, he dragged them out, he saved them, and yeah, he thought about it that maybe he should swim out of the water. You know, this is something which is people instinct. If they can swim, then they try to save themselves. They don't even think about it, but yeah, let's make those characters as stupid as possible near the end. There was the part in this, it wasn't ridiculous, but it was extremely heartbreaking when Khem said that in his previous life he watched how someone was in his eyes and he hasn't done anything. It broke my heart so much that he blamed himself when he hasn't done anything wrong, because Krongkwan was just a little kid. She had no power, she couldn't do anything, she couldn't save Ramping, and even if she would try, then probably she also... This is what Ramping wanted, and still this is absolutely disgusting for me that Ramping decided to be the worst for a literal kid who couldn't do anything. And if Khem would be incarnation of the first wife, or even this dude who was Ramping's son father, then partly at least I would understand why she created such a hell for Khem. But still, that would be pretty ridiculous because Khem had no idea why he was even cursed. But at least it would be partly understandable. But we're talking about actual kid. Any normal person would put such a huge responsibility on a kid. So that broke my heart that he apologized and that he blamed himself when he or Krongkwan, neither of them done anything wrong. A very similar part also was with Peem when he apologized to Yod that he was a bad brother as Wat, which wasn't true at all because Yod was the only one who was problematic there and he was a terrible brother, he was a terrible person, and Wat has nothing to apologize. And okay, it fit totally to Khem and Peem that they blame themselves, that they apologize because they were good people. And it was very understandable that they felt like this and very much in their character, but still it was so frustrating that they felt that way because it was absolutely heartbreaking because they haven't done anything wrong. Also, I absolutely love this part when all those people who are close for Khem and Peem show up, and especially the ones for Peem who reminded him how powerful he is and that he can defeat Ramphueng. To be honest, I would love to see him in President Ramphueng for everything what she has done because she deserves it so much. But I like what happened actually, and I like this whole part when Kasem showed Ramphueng who he is, what kind of relation they had, that he helped her come back to be herself and realize that all what she wanted is to get her baby back, that she didn't actually want this revenge, but it was because of what happened to her, and that after she came back to herself, she realized who Kasem is, that even if I hated her so much as this vicious ghost, then I was so happy for her that she was able to reunite it with her son, and that he apologized Khem because yeah, that's very least what he deserved after everything what she has done to him. But again, Khem of course proved how extremely precious person he is, that he didn't hold any grudge against her, that he didn't hate her, and that even if he had all right to feel like this, that all what he wanted to her accept her punishment, all consequences of her decisions, and that he even wished her the best in next life, to be reunited with her son and have happy life this time. Seriously, he was probably the best character that I have ever seen in any production. Okay, I totally admit that from the moment when they say goodbye to each other and they come to the car until the moment when Kasem showed Ramphueng who he is, she come back to herself and apologized Khem, it was super emotional, stressful, and absolutely heartbreaking. And we, thanks to this incredible job that those actors has done in those scenes, we could feel all those emotions and be in this with those characters. And also because of the scale of those scenes, how incredibly good they were directed, because of the music, and yeah, how detailed it was, how much they care about it to make it super epic. But it doesn't change the fact that when we look at it objectively, it was unnecessary long, it was ridiculous, and those characters acted pretty stupid in many times. After all this ridiculous stuff, we get such a beautiful, calm, and extremely happy ending in this very last part of this production, which I absolutely love because I was so happy that both our main couples got their happy ending, they had their happy ever after. I was so glad to see that Khem finally could live without worries, he could have his ordinary life, and I really like that he and Peem didn't just jump into being relationship, that Khem didn't stay in a village, but he graduated and he had this time to think what he actually wants, if there's a place for Peem in his life. And when he came back, he was a little bit more mature and he could truly choose what's gonna happen in his life this time. I absolutely love it that they not only come back to be together, that they get married, they adopted kids, and yeah, they were so happy at the end. I'm really happy because they deserve it so much after everything what they went through. That almost thanks to this, they make it up for me for all those stupid and ridiculous parts, but unfortunately not. And still, it was of course extremely great production, but unfortunately not a masterpiece. Every single actor who played in this production did such a great job and delivered absolutely incredible performance, but especially Keng, Namping, and Green, who played Peem, Khemjira, and Ramphueng. Peem was very complicated character, but Keng showed it so well that even the beginning when, for example, I really didn't like him, he was annoying for me, then still I had seen that it probably is masked because his eyes were completely different than his behavior, so huge applause for Keng definitely. When it comes to Green, who played Ramping, she had such a tough role to play. Not only that, you know, she needed this whole makeup and she needed to be so careful with how she was acting and stuff like this, but like every single one of them. But she had that kind of character who, from one side, we should theoretically hate, but from the other side, we should see her tragedy and understand her in some ways. So we should have a whole mix of feelings towards her, and I think that Green totally made it, because I think that even before we have seen the whole Ramping story, still we already could feel that there's much more in this, that she's not just a vicious ghost, but she definitely had a reason to be so horrible for Khem. So yeah, definitely huge applause for her. But I think that the person who deserves for the bigger applause and the bigger praise is definitely Namping for everything what he has done as Khemjira, because he made this character absolutely wonderful. I fell in love so much with this character, and Namping showed so many times during the story that he's incredibly an extremely talented actor. His skills are seriously wonderful. I want to praise him for especially two scenes. First, when he played Ramping for a moment when she possessed Khem. Namping nailed it so much because he totally acted like Ramping. He had her facial expression, the way how he smiled, talk, move, everything. I totally believe that it was Ramping in Khem's body. Another scene which even more showed how incredibly talented Namping is was when he was acting Zed, and when Zed was pretending that he's Khem. He was so good in this because his facial expression, the way how he moved, the way how he speak, seriously everything looked totally like Zed and not at all like Khem, even if it looked like Khem. But yeah, it was absolutely magnificent. But yeah, let's talk about the scene for a second when Zed was pretending to be Khem. He was so terrible in this because not even for a second we could believe that this is Khem. From the first moment when they showed him in the car, because he was way too interested about ghosts when Khem was terrified always. When he touched Charn and the way how he looked at him, but especially after they left the car and the way how he was acting, that not only the way how he was walking and moving, his facial expression, he was way too confident to be Khem, but especially that why he would change so much completely out of nowhere. And I'm still shocked that Ramping fell for it, because it was totally not like Khem, because Khem never sweared, he never yelled when Zed was doing all this time. And even this moment when Zed got scared when those motorcycles were cycling around them, then still the way how he was scared was completely different than Khem. So definitely huge applause for those two scenes for Namping. And yeah, in general, for how incredibly great performance he made as Khemjira and proved that he's extremely talented actor. Now let's come to conclusion. Even if I had some problems near the end with this production, then still it doesn't change the fact that I think that it was one of the best productions that I have ever seen. And this is definitely the show which is worthy to watch, and I'm pretty sure that you will get attached to this story. And I think that already with the first episode, it totally can catch you, can get attached to those characters, and feel in this universe with those characters like home. I wouldn't be surprised if for many people it would be a comfy show, because it kind of is that kind of show also, even if it was extremely heartbreaking at the same time. But yeah, we got incredibly good story with well-written characters, except some parts near the end when they didn't act like them, but okay, except this, it was great. With incredibly talented cast, it was absolutely beautiful, the way how it was directed. Every single person who was part of this, from behind the scenes and the ones who we have seen in this story, we could feel how much effort and love every single person put into this production. It gave me so many good memories, and I'm sure that I will keep coming back to this universe because it feels like home. And I also think that it was made on purpose that way. So yeah, I absolutely love it. I definitely highly recommend it. And I'm happy that this is so loved by people, because it definitely deserve it. And like I said, I really hope so that it will have such a big impact that thanks to this story we will see not only more that kind of ones, but also that we will see different side of Thailand. We will hear different languages and dialects which they had. We will see different cultures, which are so many in Thailand. So yeah, I really hope so that this drama will be remembered and it will have a huge influence on the whole industry. And yeah, I can't wait to see all these actors again in different productions because all of them did such a great job. I can't wait to see both our ships in different production. I become a big fan of them. And yeah, that's all I want to say about this production. Now it's your turn. Please tell me in the comment section what do you think about this story, who was your favorite character or characters, and in general, share your thoughts. I'm very curious to find out what do you think. And thank you so much for spending your precious time with me today. Please remember to take care about yourself and others. Please remember to be aware about what's going around the world. Smile a lot and see you in the next video. Bye bye!